My mother made a false report because I decided to spend Christmas with my girlfriend's family, but she ended up spending the holidays in jail. I, 30 years old, moved from central United States to the northwest coast when I was 22, mainly to get away from my crazy mother. Most of my family enabled her behavior because it was easier to go along with it than to confront her, except for my 3 older sisters who ran away because they couldn't stand her. One of them even moved to Canada. So yes, not only was I the only boy, but also the youngest, which made me a perpetual baby in my mother's eyes. So, my mother often tried to infantilize me as I grew up. She tried to feed me with a spoon when I was 16 and then complained that I didn't support her when I refused to let her do things like that. Then, she gaslighted me when I didn't give in to her whining. Her behavior has been manipulative and narcissistic for as long as I can remember. She tended to make everything about her. Some people said she had a queen mother complex. She always expected to be honored and revered during any holiday because even my birthdays had to be about her, even though she did none of the work or planning. She showed up to my 21st birthday wearing what looked like a wedding dress or something similar. She then expected me to escort her everywhere from the moment she arrived. We were just celebrating at a local bar, not some fancy club. So, as you can imagine, that went over as well as you'd expect, and she caused a huge scene saying that I was humiliating her on her day. When I said it wasn't her day, it was mine, she threw a tantrum and stormed out like a teenager who had just been stood up at prom. And that wasn't all. She had other habits that were incredibly disturbing to me. She tried to sit on my lap a couple of times and said she wanted cuddles. I called it weird openly, and she did her usual pout and gaslighting. When she was 45, she started talking openly to other people near me about wanting to get a facelift and breast implants to look 20 years younger. And while doing this, she would glance at me sideways. But my father firmly said he would never pay for such unnecessary things. This caused many arguments in which she called him unsupportive, and then she would play the victim for weeks. We weren't very big on going to church, but she dragged my father and me to the local Mormon church on random Sundays when she wanted to try to get back at me for not enabling her. We weren't even Mormons, but it was the closest church. Once, she embarrassed me by trying to infantilize me in front of an entire congregation after the sermon, and I confronted her about what she was really doing. I then just left. That was the last straw, and I rented a room in a friend's parents' house for $200 a month. As I packed to leave, she begged me to stay almost the entire time. I told her I was her son, not her husband, and that I was tired of the disgusting way she treated me. I had my own life to live, after all. She just stormed off crying, and we didn't talk for months. I found out from my cousin that she had been telling people I would come running back to her any day, but when I didn't, she lost it. My mother, even years after I became an adult, would still talk to me openly as if I were a small child in front of others and expected me to play along. And when I didn't, she would first look at me like she was begging. But I kept a stone face. That made her grab my arm and try to drag me outside like a child to whisper loudly in my ear. But I always refused to let her do that, and even pushed her away a couple of times when she wouldn't let go. And the last time she tried, she dug her nails into my shoulder, so I slapped her hand away so hard it left a bruise. That made her resort to more emotional manipulation. We both went to my uncle's birthday, and while we were there, she followed me around and loudly talked to my aunt about how I used to nurse as a baby whenever I was near her. She even said she regretted not being able to make me do that still. Then she looked at me again with that pleading face. I wanted to puke. My aunt was visibly disgusted because I had told her many previous things, but I guess she never believed it was as bad as I said until that day. When I refused to indulge my mother at the party, she finally broke down and screamed that she was the matriarch and that whatever she said went. She then tried to order me to go to her like a little boy, to which I reminded her that I no longer lived with her and didn't have to do what she said because I wasn't a child. And then several other family members supported me for the first time, which really surprised me. That made my mother yell at us all and leave, only to call me multiple times afterward and try to gaslight me over the phone. I let everything go to voicemail. Before deciding to leave my city, I had a girlfriend there who I really liked. We had been dating for a few months, and she wanted to meet my family. I was skeptical and warned her about my mother, but she must have thought I was joking. You should have seen the look on her face when she met my mother. My mother was especially passive-aggressive with her when they met because she was stealing her baby, as we heard her say to a relative on the phone in the kitchen when she thought no one else was listening. Then, later, while cutting a cake she had baked, my mother gave my then-girlfriend a creepy look while holding a large kitchen knife. Needless to say, that poor girl couldn't handle my mother for long, and we broke up amicably shortly after because she never wanted to risk having someone like my mother as a mother-in-law. Sadly, I had to completely agree. So when I told my mother I was moving more than 15 miles away, she went crazy and tried to cling to me, saying she wouldn't allow it, but I pushed her off and said she didn't have the power to stop me. I had saved up all I could for years and bought a truck and a camper trailer and spent another 2 years living in that camper while working a simple job in Northern California. During that time, I didn't even bother to keep in contact with any family. Eventually, I met someone new, and she and I are still together to this day. Neither of us is really interested in getting married or having kids. In December of that year, I received multiple calls, emails, and texts from her begging me to come to Christmas and not bring my girlfriend. I don't know how she had found out, but there she was. I said if she wasn't welcome, then neither was I. She called me irrational and called my girlfriend a meddling bitch in our special bond. She also said no woman should come between a mother and her son. Then she practically ordered me to go. When I refused, she started making empty threats about hurting herself. I told her she could do whatever she wanted. It was her own body, her decision, but I wasn't going to Christmas and would spend it with my girlfriend's family instead. My mother said I would regret that decision and hung up in a rage. Well, 2 days before Christmas, the door of the little house that my girlfriend and I were renting was kicked in by the police, convinced we were running a meth lab. They arrested us and interrogated us while the police turned our yard into a real flea market, as they pulled many of our furniture and personal belongings outside in rows to inspect them. They searched the house with drug-sniffing dogs and found nothing but aspirin and a prescription I had for depression at the time. Needless to say, they looked visibly disappointed. I guess they were expecting a big drug bust or something. It turns out all this happened because my crazy mother had called them and given such precise details that she must have been stalking us at some point. She claimed I was using my camper as a cover to sell methamphetamine. I guess she watched a lot of Breaking Bad. When the police found nothing in the house, in both vehicles, or in the camper, they were forced to put everything back and let us go. Understandably, we were furious, but I couldn't do much more than file a complaint because they had damaged the house, and my landlord was angry about that. As a big dose of karma, my mother was arrested during her own Christmas party in front of most of the family. The investigation later showed that she had flown to my state. She then spent a few days stalking us and taking pictures of me, my girlfriend, and our house. She had broken in and photographed everything she could, even my underwear in the drawer. That was especially disgusting, and the police found she had documented where I worked and what hours my girlfriend and I were usually at home or at our jobs. We're not sure what her ultimate goal was, but it probably involved more than just scaring me with the police. I requested a restraining order, and my mother spent 2 years in jail for making a false report and for harassment and stalking. While my mother was locked up, I reconnected with my family, and everyone admitted that they had known for years how she was with me. They apologized for not doing anything to help, especially my father. He cried while giving me a huge apology over the phone. He filed for divorce after my mother got out of jail. In the divorce, my mother got the house, mainly because my father no longer wanted her and agreed to leave his share for a clean break. The court ruled that he didn't have to pay any spousal support anyway because they were both retired. So, he chose to move closer to me and now lives in the same state in an extreme trailer he already had since the 90s along the West Coast. He says he spends his afternoons drinking and watching the waves, and he couldn't be happier. My mother didn't take the divorce well and tried to drag it out, but several relatives came forward with statements as witnesses. My sisters all showed up to talk about what she was really like, and some relatives even had recordings of the disgusting things my mom used to say. On top of all that, it was found out that my mother had not only been unfaithful to my father but had done so several times with different men. Some even came forward during the divorce with proof. The judge ended up refusing to let my mother drag out the divorce any longer, and even her lawyer told her to let it go if she wanted to keep her retirement intact. And when everything was over, my mother was basically left alone in the old family house, and almost no one wanted to have anything to do with her. She has contacted me several times with different numbers, but I just told her this was the result of her own actions, and now she would have to live with it. She tried to say she was going to therapy, but I told her she should have done that long ago and that I didn't care anymore because she couldn't undo the things she had already done. She just cried and hung up the phone. I haven't talked to her since. Update 1. This is a roller coaster. Anyone who has seen my original post knows the level of infantilizing craziness my mother had with me. She practically wanted me attached to her hip and wanted me to be perpetually a child. This is just one of the many horrible things she did. I don't plan on making many posts, but this story feels like I want to pull it out separately from my original post. It was late 2012, and I was turning 21. I was the last person in my friend circle to reach that age. So we decided the best way to enjoy my birthday was to do it at a local bar. My mom didn't like this idea because it didn't seem appropriate to her, but the rest of the family told me to enjoy the day the way I wanted, so I decided the bar was what I wanted. My mom did call me a couple of times asking me to change my mind, but I wasn't going to do it. Every birthday I had while living with my parents, my mom made it all about her. She would always dress like she was going to extravagant parties and always made herself the center of attention. She would hover over me every time I blew out the candles on my cakes and had to be in every picture taken of me. I stayed living at my parents' house as long as I could to save money, and trust me, I was saving every last penny in a savings account. Now it was time for my 21st birthday, and I was determined not to let her ruin it or make it about her. One of my friends brought a small chocolate cake, and it only had one candle shaped like the number 21. It was some of my favorite rock songs, and I was enjoying a gin and tonic. Then my mom showed up. She walked in swaying in what looked like a wedding dress or something like that, and her hair was done in what I think could best be described as a Cinderella Disney style. Her face was full of makeup to try not to look almost 50. My dad walked in behind her in his church suit. He didn't look happy. My mom paraded toward me and clung to my arm. And when I say paraded, I mean she strutted, skipping every step, but I pulled away from her and forced her to let go. I firmly said I wasn't going to go arm in arm with her and that I was going to enjoy my birthday the way I wanted. She didn't like hearing that and kept wanting my arm. Every time I got up to do anything, she would stick to me and try to parade me around like we were going to march. A guy there that I didn't know made a joke saying we looked like such a happy couple. My mom blushed as if she were my girlfriend or something. That made me explode, and I said that what the guy said was disgusting, that I wasn't going to marry my crazy mom. My mom then made a shocked face and then a sad face as if her whole world had collapsed. Then she started crying. Everyone was watching. I just walked to the men's bathroom where she couldn't follow me. My dad came in a few minutes later and said that my mom had calmed down and that it was safe to come out. She had planted herself in my seat at the table, and although they told her to move when it was time for cake, she didn't want to. Luckily, my dad made her get up, and my friends made sure to sit in places that kept my mom from sitting near me or directly in my line of sight. My best friend lit the cake, and just before I could blow it out, I noticed my mom lurking creepily right behind me. I got mad and told her I wasn't going to let her do that again. She could sit down or leave. She started making a scene, and my dad had to make her stop. A lot of people around the bar were watching my mom and laughing. She started making that sort of squinty-eyed rage look where you expect tears at any moment. Then she just sat back down. My friends took pictures of me and made sure my mom didn't make it into any. Not for lack of trying on her part. Anyway, my mom finally hit her breaking point when I started dancing with a girl while a live band played. We chose that day for the party because a local band was playing in the afternoon. They were playing some classic rock. I started dancing with a nice redhead when my mom suddenly grabbed my arm and started trying to dance with me forcibly. I had to peel her off. She screamed at me so loudly it hurt my ears, and the band stopped playing. She tried to grab me by the ear like she used to when she scolded me, but I slapped her hand away. She screamed that I was embarrassing her on her day. I responded that it wasn't her day, it was never her day, it was mine. She screamed that she gave birth to me, and that made it her day. I said it didn't work like that and that this was my day and only my day. Then all my friends backed me up. The band was even scolding my mom. One even called her a witch, if I remember correctly. Suddenly, she was looking around at everyone, and you could see it finally clicking for her how huge of a scene she was making. I don't know if you've ever seen an entire bar fall completely silent while everyone stares at one person, but that's what happened. One of the staff members simply pointed to the door and told her to leave. The girl I had been dancing with, as if on purpose, also grabbed my arm and told me to ignore my mom and have fun. My mom then had a mental breakdown and ran out of the bar crying loudly like a girl whose prom had been ruined. My dad didn't follow her. Instead, he just ordered another beer. The rest of the night was great because after the bar, we all went to my best friend's house and played old video games. Drunk Mario Kart is surprisingly fun. The next time I saw my mom, she acted as if the events of my 21st birthday never happened, and on my 22nd birthday, I celebrated the same way at the same bar. My mom showed up there too, but didn't try any of the same things she did before. She left halfway through the party when I was dancing with my then girlfriend. Later that year, I moved far away, and my mom hasn't attended any of my birthdays since then. Update 2. Although I did file charges against my mom for stalking me and trying to frame me as a drug dealer, I didn't want to spend much time in court because that meant being near her. So, the events I'm going to describe are half from me and half from my father. They probably won't be very precise. It was 5 years ago. So please don't tear me apart if something sounds weird. It's something I've mostly tried to put behind me. To start with, my dad didn't actually know my crazy mother had flown to my state to stalk me. She told him she was just going to take a little vacation away from everyone for her own mental health, and she never told him where she was going. My poor dad had no idea what she was about to do, or he would have warned me. My mother then spent several days secretly following me and my girlfriend with her phone. She used the spare key we had hidden inside a fake stone to enter the house we were living in at the time. Then she photographed everything she could, even more intimate things than I'd care to describe. After she got back home, my father said she looked very smug about something. He described it as that look someone has when they think they've won. She looked unusually happy and excited until the police showed up and arrested her at Christmas. My father said she was crying like crazy and saying she hadn't done anything wrong while the police took her away. The evidence against her was clear. All the photos were found on her phone, and my father quickly realized what she had done. The call my mother made to report that I was selling drugs was even made from her own phone. The call was recorded and tracked back to her phone quite easily. When my mother was confronted with the evidence, my father said she just started crying and begging. When she refused to get up from the table, the police had to move her. My father said she just collapsed completely and refused to cooperate. No one bailed her out either. She had to use her own money to get out. My father said she wanted to call me to beg, but I guess in a rare moment of clarity, she realized there was no way in hell I was going to bail her out after what she did. So she stayed locked up for a while before finally using her own money to get out. She didn't try to run. In fact, she firmly believed she was justified in what she did and felt like she could convince a judge of her point of view. Her lawyer advised her to plead guilty. So she fired him and said she would represent herself. Well, that went as well as you can imagine. She was in court faster than I thought. My girlfriend and I had to fly in to testify against my mother, but I just stayed for what was necessary. I took the first flight I could back. While I was there, my mother seemed to stare at me almost constantly. The looks ranged from her pleading and disgusting expression to outright rage. When my mother took the stand, she gave a speech about why she thought she was right. I needed to learn a lesson for refusing to come back home and for putting some bitch before her, because she should have been the only woman I ever needed. She also tried to keep staring at me the whole time she gave that speech. The judge repeatedly told her not to do that. I left before the verdict. The judge considered my mother mentally unwell, but when he said this, she jumped on him saying she was perfectly sane. Of course, that just made her seem crazier. She said she was just a mother caring for her son and did what she had to do to teach me a lesson. My father spoke and said that if she really cared about me, She wouldn't have tried to turn her own son into her second husband, nor would she have tried to frame me for things I didn't do just because I refused to obey her. That made her jump on him, and the guards had to separate them. The judge originally was going to be more lenient with my mother, but he decided she needed real time behind bars and sentenced her to 2 years in prison with 3 years of probation. When she was sentenced, my mother went into full baby mode and threw a tantrum, pounding her fists and crying like a baby. They had to drag her out of the courtroom because she refused to cooperate again. My father described the next 2 years without her as an absolute blessing. He decided he would be ready for a divorce as soon as she got out, and I mean handing her the papers the very day she came home. That same day, he left that house for good. He has an extreme trailer and parked it at a friend's house. From there, he spent months fighting my crazy mother in the divorce. It was then that even more insanity about her came to light. My father finally won, and moved to my state with his trailer as soon as he could. Apart from a few strange calls from her, I haven't had anything to do with my mother again, and neither has my father. He spent some time just living as a retiree on the coast, but then he decided to get a simple part-time job at a fish canning factory because he was bored. He says it pays the bills and he's made lots of friends. He's happy, and I'm happy he's happy. I visit him on weekends when I can. As for my mother, I haven't said a word to her in 2 years. Any number she used to call me from after the trial has been blocked. Update 3, this should be my final update, and it's going to be tough. For everyone who said my mother would try anything to contact me after her probation ended, you were absolutely right. 5 years later, she still hadn't let go of the craziness in her head, and she was still coming for me with the same incestuous mindset from before. Here's what happened. My aunt contacted me and said my mother was looking to hire a private investigator to find me since no one in the family would tell her where I was. I've moved since all the things I previously wrote about. Luckily, she was just boasting about it because she couldn't afford a private investigator without losing a good chunk of her retirement savings. Almost no family members talk to her anymore beyond a check-in every now and then to make sure she's still breathing. They said she was generally quiet, antisocial, and regretful. It turns out she was just waiting for her moment. All that therapy she supposedly went to over the past years was pure facade. She hasn't changed at all. No, I take that back. She has changed, but for the worse. She wanted her probation and my restraining order against her to expire. Then she went back to being her old self. She started wearing colorful dresses in public that could be described as bad bridesmaid or Disney princess styles. She's almost 60, and she started going out dressed like that as soon as her probation ended. She spent the last 3 years after prison slowly gathering those dresses and putting on the act of an old woman no one loves. Anyone who saw her said those dresses were the only thing she wore once her probation was up. Even in the house, it was her main attire. I wouldn't be surprised if she spent more money on makeup and hair dye than on food every month. To top it off, she also went crazy with the keto diet this year to lose weight. I admit she lost quite a bit, but she slathers her face with makeup and does her hair in all the ways you would expect someone in the most extreme denial about her age. My aunt sent me some pictures of her, and it was way worse than how she looked at my 21st birthday. Imagine a skinny, Disney version of that woman from the Drew Carey show who wore tons of makeup in every episode. That's the infantilizer. Many would say now that I should just keep no contact, but it's easier said than done. My mother may not know where I live, but she knows what state I'm in. And she also believed I couldn't be too far from my father, and she was right. My mother was threatening to come to my state and literally look for me everywhere. Picture an old lady dressed as a Disney princess in the middle of a city handing out pictures of me from almost a decade ago, asking people where I am and telling them whatever she can about me. I can only imagine the disgusting things that would come out of her mouth. I wasn't going to let that happen. I spoke to several relatives, and we agreed that the only way my mother wouldn't come running with her Disney princess butt to my state to find me would be if I talked to her first. I know a lot of people are probably mentally screaming, "Don't do it. She's a psychopath." Well, they're not wrong, but at the same time, I'm tired of running. She had no idea how I looked after over 5 years. I wasn't the same guy she knew anymore. I'm bigger, more muscular, and have a nice beard. I've even learned some boxing with a friend from the gym. He still kicks my ass, but I fight back. My aunt helped me arrange to talk to my mother on Skype. My mother was apparently so excited she literally wet herself and had to go change before we could talk. My aunt was with her on the other side and was ready to intervene if things got too crazy. The video call connected, and when we saw each other for the first time, my mother didn't recognize me at all. She just asked who the big, hairy guy was in front of the screen until I spoke. The first words out of my mouth were sarcastically, "You were expecting Prince Charming?" Thanks to Shrek for the line. She recognized my voice immediately and started crying. She was sniveling and asking what I had done to myself. I told her I grew up, not thanks to her. My aunt mediated for half an hour and calmed everyone down. My mother had to wipe off a lot of makeup because her tears were running it. Then she wanted to be excused to go touch it up. I told her I wasn't going to wait for that. We either talked then, or not at all. She whined that she wanted to look good for me. I told her there was nothing she could do to look good for me. That made her cry more, and I said, "No, my own mother doesn't find me attractive? Guess I'll cry about it." At first, my girlfriend wasn't in the frame, but the second my mother realized she was there, she became super angry and was about to say something condemnatory. But she stopped before saying anything worse like, "What's she doing there?" I told her we still live together, I love her, and maybe someday we'll get married. My mother collapsed on the couch crying and acting like a sad diva. I told her to stop being a baby and calm down. Even if my girlfriend and I never got married, I would still want to grow old with her. My mother actually screamed, "But I'm already old and alone." I told her that didn't mean anything to me. I told her to calm down or I would end the call and we'd never talk again. She took a moment to calm down, and my aunt brought her a keto ice cream from the freezer. She started devouring it greedily, got a couple of headaches from the ice cream, and spent the rest of the time complaining about being old until she finished it. When she was done, she threw the ice cream container away, calmed down unsettlingly, and said she was ready to talk again. We talked about mundane things for a while. She tried to ask me intimate details of my life, where I worked, where I lived, all that. Every time I refused to answer, I told her she wasn't allowed any of those details after stalking me and trying to frame me as a drug dealer like in Breaking Bad. She cried saying it was 5 years ago and begged me to let it go. I told her she was incredibly lucky I was even talking to her after everything she did, which sent her back into crying, and my aunt had to take a few minutes to calm her down. It was mean of us, but my girlfriend and I had a plan to see just how crazy my mother really was. I knew she was barely holding it together. We waited for the perfect opportunity, and my girlfriend leaned in and gave me a kiss on the lips. My mother gave a very disturbing look, wide-eyed, and actually said, "I wish you'd let me kiss you like that too." We all went silent. My aunt, who had been mediating, looked like she had just been slapped. And I said, "That's it, I'm done. You haven't changed at all." My girlfriend hugged me, and I hugged her back, saying she's my one and only love. My mother completely lost it and started screaming. That's when I slammed the laptop shut and turned it off. My aunt on the other side had a really hard time. My mother began attacking her like a lunatic, and they had to call the police. My mother ended up in a psychiatric facility because she also attacked the police. It must have been like a scene from a horror movie or a video game, with an old woman, her makeup smeared, and a Disney princess dress, attacking people like a wild animal. The police arrested her after spraying her with pepper spray, and soon after, she was admitted to a psychiatric ward. She's been there for a few months now, and they've deemed her a danger to herself and others. After they locked her up, my mother started threatening to take her own life if I didn't come see her. She also demanded to be allowed her makeup and dresses, which, of course, was denied. My aunt was initially the only one who visited her and somehow became her legal power of attorney. I don't know the details of how that happened, but I don't care either. My aunt told me that my mother seems truly broken now. They have her under constant surveillance, and she wants to die. She's stopped crying over me, but she spent a lot of time in serious denial because she was convinced that I would come for her. Then, of all people, my father visited her. Not long ago, he packed up his trailer and drove to her home state. My mother was not happy to see him. I don't know what they said, but I heard he verbally tore her apart. It doesn't take much to make her cry, but what he said did something far worse. I think she had been holding those words for 5 years, but whatever he said had such a strong impact that she almost became catatonic. My aunt told me that my mother became more cooperative after that, and she stopped crying because the Prince Charming didn't come for her. My father didn't stay. He spent about 2 weeks catching up with everyone and then left for New Mexico. He has a cousin there, and he says he wants to be in the desert for a while because the salty coastal air was ruining his truck and trailer. Plus, he hates seafood. So, there he is now. One of my younger cousins on my mother's side, who has a pregnant girlfriend, is going to move into my mother's house and take care of the maintenance, bills, and taxes in exchange for not paying rent. They can stay there while my mother is locked up, or until she dies. Either way, I wouldn't want to live there even if she left me the house in her will. I want nothing to do with her. I'm glad my mother isn't coming to look for me, but at the same time, I honestly don't care that she's locked up in a padded cell. She lost any care I had for her a long time ago. I would have beaten her myself if she came for me again. It seems like I might never have to do that. If she ever gets out of there, I'll be filing for another restraining order immediately. My aunt and I are pretty convinced she'll be locked up for a long time, maybe the rest of her life. I hope so. Edit. I understand how some might frame it, but her manipulation runs deep. She had years of therapy and still didn't change. Even if she could improve, it doesn't undo everything she's already done. And with a mental diagnosis, I know she'd probably just blame that for everything. Yes, since I made this account, I've found that a lot of people went through very similar things to what I did. Humiliation was one of the only ways she backed down.